Welcome to the Elements of Marketing. I am here and so excited to be here with Rose Hamilton. First, let me put up the slate here. Yes, this is episode 10 of the Elements of Marketing. Rose Hamilton is I'm so excited to have her. Rose is in the book. She is in the chapter Web Experience. And Rose, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and I hadn't realized that you've been doing e-commerce for almost 15 years. Maybe more, which is very impressive. What attracted you to e-commerce and how were you so prescient to get started 15 years ago?
Well, that's a great question. You know, I always loved watching consumer behavior. And for me, it all begins with how are people behaving, interacting, how are you influencing and shaping behavior, and what are consumers doing? So I'm always fascinated by trends. And as the world grew, I began in really advertising, marketing, and I'd say direct response, and happened to be lucky that it was right about the point the internet began that I jumped on the wave pretty early and was a bit the redheaded stepchild in the early days, I will admit.
Right.
But I never mind that because I've got a little entrepreneurial streak in me. And so I've just enjoyed riding it, experiencing it, helped shaping it, and it's just been amazing. And I think the best is still really yet to come.
Well, so you were at Chico's. So you had a lot of clothes retail. You had Chico's and Wilson Leather and Best Buy in there. And of course, Best Buy had a very exciting, they were very big into e-commerce early on and did some really cool things. But before we get onto your new job, and I am really excited to talk about your new job. In the book, you were at Pet360, a company that you spent 5 years at, which is a long, is a good, healthy amount of time. And we talked a lot in the book about creating this sort of ideal web experience. I'm just talk from a general standpoint over the years at Pet360, how you sort of evolved the web experience.
When I arrived at the very beginning stages of my career there, it was really a direct response, auto replenishment, continuity, subscription business that was really transaction based. And the beauty of being in a digital environment is we had the opportunity to test things and try new things. And very early on, about a year into my experience there, we realized that pet parents really, they're interested in different needs at different stages. And really the content and the education and the entertainment and all the things that we'd be able to bring them to really make pet parenting a joyful experience was all right up our alley in the digital arena. And so obviously personalization and CRM and content and figuring out to really engage became a big focus for us. So much so that the brand I actually began with, which was Pet Food Direct, we wound up branding Pet360 and launching an entirely new brand, entirely new experience, because we really wanted to focus on looking at content and education and helping pet parents at every stage of their journey and being really unique and differentiated on that front. And while we sold products, more importantly, we were really there to help deliver unmet needs around education and finding solutions for whatever pet parents' need would be at any point in time. So it changed a lot, and we evolved from being very transaction-based in my early days all the way through building a media company and putting content as our core and moving to personalization and really building trusted relationships with pet parents and engaging with them in unique and fun ways. And certainly digital offers just a plethora of ways to do fun things and really bring the pet parent to the table and create a brand together and really co-create experiences.
Well, first of all, you were saying pet parent. That was the first time I had heard the term. I heard that later other brands had used it, but I always will attribute it to you and your usage of it. And it's such a wonderful description as a pet parent myself. Pinky apologizes for not being able to be on the show. But had you still been at Pet360, he would have joined us. He has made an appearance on Blab because I interviewed the CEO of the Pedigree Foundation. We had a really interesting conversation about pets and adoption and all those other good things. So anyway, to not get off on track, let's Let's dig in a little bit on, because so a lot of people, when they think about e-commerce, they think about, okay, I've got this cup right here. Here's a cup, and I want to sell this cup for a certain amount of dollars, right? And so I have to acquire a customer to buy the cup, and then I have to, make sure that they get the cup and it isn't broken, and it was the cup they ordered, and all of those sort of transactional things. And they have to make that payout. So it's a very sort of rational thing. And here you are talking about a very emotional thing.
Yeah.
How did, and maybe we could focus on content first. How did you sort of make the business case that the content was in fact ultimately going to contribute to an increase in sales? Because, I mean, we're not doing it for our health as much as it's nice to do this. You did want to increase sales, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably one of my favorite topics of the experience I had in my time at Pet 360, because we really and truly would look at a session-based KPI. And it was really and truly, did somebody transact or not in that exact experience that they had. And over time, we looked at it and said, well, we've got our friends at Amazon, and we've got lots of other people who sell the same products that we do. And so it's going to be a very fast race to the bottom if we keep worrying about price and promotion as our main driver.
Right.
And so a big part of taking a risk and really placing bets on content came from doing customer research and finding out that pet parents had very few choices and options of really getting trusted advice and answers.
Right.
And given the prominence of our Pet MD brand, where all the content was and is veterinarian written, and given the credibility a consumer would look at when they see product coming up or see content coming up, seeing that Pet MD stamp became very valuable. And so as we were doing our research, we quickly learned having a one-stop shop, a destination where you have credible resources helping you make decisions, became really key. And at the end of the day, we were able to model out, and believe me, it wasn't without the CFO and I not having many hours of talking back and forth and really ripping the model apart and saying, what can our new way of success be? And it became more of a long-term investment for our investors, which included really thinking at lifetime value.
Right.
And so while a lot of people will talk about lifetime value, we actually had to put it in practice. We didn't have the analytics in place. And we needed to figure out how to build that lifetime journey and put the milestones and be able to say, if we spend X on a customer today, we expect they're going to have a certain amount of touch points along the way.
Right.
And eventually their lifetime value and their stickiness and their loyalty to us should increase because we're offering something that is more than just a great price. We're offering expert advice. We're offering entertainment. We're offering so much more, and we're offering connections to other people that Amazon really wasn't offering and delivering, nor would you find anywhere else other than potentially the pet park or your friends and your family, because research would tell us that's really how pet parents are finding most of their advice. And so being able to package that and attach it to lifetime value and put measures and metrics in place that are a little different than just the operating metrics,
right,
which are still important. But that balance is what helps one look a little further out into the future to say what you're doing today needs to pay off. And so those checkpoints along the way became very important as we looked at lifetime value.
Well, you hit on one of my biggest pet peeves. I had the unfortunate pleasure of having watch two clients drive their businesses into the ground by focusing simply on the acquisition cost. And as we were doing the social, it happened for both of those clients, and they literally, the entire organization was focused on cost per acquisition, period. How could they drive the cheapest? Meanwhile, off the back of the truck, every single day, customers were following because they were bringing on customers they had acquired cheaply through promotions who had no loyalty, and they would fall off. And of course, because you acquire the wrong customers, you're also going to have lots of complaints, right, on social, which of course we had to clean up, and we really couldn't. Because we couldn't make the problems created by a cost per acquisition focus go away. So given that, however, you still, I can't remember, was Pet 360 public or private?
We were private, and then PetSmart acquired us about 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, and became public. Right. And then PetSmart went private again. So now officially everything's private.
Right. Well, and I think that does make a big difference, because the push for quarterly earnings tends to put companies much more on a short-term revenue focus and a customer number than, say, a lifetime value. So how do you, when you're looking at lifetime value, I mean, if you know it's going to cost you $100 to acquire a customer and it's not going to pay out for 5 years, how do you make that conversation work for you when you don't, meanwhile, there is such a thing as revenue and profitability and all those other things.
Well, I think first, the most important conversation to have is expectations around what you expect that payback to be.
Right.
So it could be a $300 payback. If you're at 100 today and you need 300, right, there should, in theory, be checkpoints along the way to prove the hypothesis. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about here, is a hypothesis that there are unmet needs, and that content and that education and expert advice will fill those and cause a customer to want to stick with you and to stay loyal to you as they go through time. And so really the trick to the whole thing there was saying, here are the milestones and the checkpoints and the deliverables and what we expect to be true. And those quick quarterly check-ins to see how you're advancing and to see what anecdotal information do you have. Are you on the right path, and are you moving up and to the right? There's that, but then there's also the actual modeling out that says, in order for the business to create leverage, how many more new customers do we need to have, and how many of them need to stick with us? Right. And in our experience, it was also how many of them need to be on the continuity program, and how do we think about the subscription-based model, and what other services and things are we tacking on top of it that should be extra revenue streams? Right. And so a media business is a good example of that, where while there's consumer revenue coming from e-commerce, as you monetize and think about content, that's another revenue stream as you work with partners and people who want to target that wonderful base of pet parents. So it really became a blend of, it's not ignoring revenue and ignoring the process of what you need to be doing around loyalty and new customer and having your targets, but it's a blend of that plus your checkpoints, which are your lagging indicators. So I like to think about it as leading are certainly going to be your revenue, your top line and your bottom line, and how you're spending. But your lagging becomes the lifetime revenue pieces, and you might not look at those every day, nor should you, but you should have that combined with a net promoter score that helps with satisfaction, combined with what are your engagement metrics around things like social, things like content, things like even on the website. And so it's really that combination of the leading and the lagging, and it's a blend. And every business will be a little different in terms of which in the plethora of KPIs you choose to look at. But I think that really becomes the secret sauce, is how you look at it and how you look at the milestones and management of expectations along the way, and quick, frequent check-ins and the ability to test things and allow room to fail. Have a test budget set up so that you can dip into it and not have it be part of your expectation for success. Those are all ingredients that I think are really important, and it really doesn't matter if you're publicly or privately held. You've got to have that blend and be able to give yourself enough room, but plan for the room. Right. And I think if you don't plan for the room, you'll never test and try and learn.
So were you able to, on a super granular level, say, this person read this article on this area, and that translated, or you could see some correlation between content engagement and sales, or content engagement and loyalty?
Yes. So an example of that would be on the community side of the website. There were experiences, a website, mobile experience, however you want to look at it, the engagement in the community section and the actual purchase behavior of customers, maybe not at an individual level, but at an aggregate, we were able to see the lift in conversion of somebody who had engaged in content versus somebody who had not. And something that generic in general gave us directional hypothesis without having to reinvent the wheel and have the perfect, most sophisticated CRM system, keeping in mind we were a scrappy business. Right. But that was enough information to be able to warrant moving forward and to think about directionally what decisions should we make. And so over time, of course, that type of intelligence has grown, and the team's done a great job of continuing to build it to the point of now when advertising is being served, that's another element of content and another element of engagement and tracking. And so, businesses can get fairly sophisticated on that level now, but simple, sophisticated, either way, there are at least some areas, even in simple things like Google Analytics, to be able to start looking at some of the trends and some of the patterns.
Right. So several years ago, when we talked about content as a means of helping a brand, it was all about SEO and getting people there on an organic level. It seems that conversation has shifted quite a bit now to it does contribute on an organic level, but really it's more in terms of engagement and nurturing. Did you see that sort of transition happen?
Well, it depends. And the reason why I say that is a brand like PetMD was and is well situated to have been in the SEO space and in the engines with really quality content long ago.
Right.
And so over time, that has helped the brand significantly. But a space where I see the trend changing is the organic capability to gather new followers in an arena like a Facebook, as an example.
Yeah.
And when you look at that, it's pretty hard these days to get that kind of organic growth that we could have experienced, any brand could have experienced years ago. And so the focus on really good quality content and engagement metrics almost become more important as a way to get your brand and your message in front of the right eyeballs. And so I definitely see that trend across the board. And it definitely has an impact on how much video should you be producing versus written content. And it all comes down to how are people engaging with you becomes really very important to understand and know, which leads to analytics, which become even more important in what we do every day.
Right.
And really having an understanding of how are customers choosing to engage with you. And some brands will have permission in some places and others in other places.
It's interesting to hear you talk about Facebook for a second. I just read an article on how a lot of publishers, and in this case, what I'm talking about, traditional magazine content sites that attract people, not that are not necessarily commerce sites. And just a year ago or two, they were getting 30% of their referral traffic from Facebook, and that number is down to like 9%. And you can imagine what their businesses look like with that kind of a huge decline in what we would call organic traffic as a result of Facebook just saying, no, publish on our site. Don't worry about our, this isn't the space you're looking for. Come over here. So that they seem to be sucking out a lot of the ad dollars. So that has got to, when you look at Facebook today, do you just say that's a paid platform and that's really from a marketeer standpoint, is there any organic upside on Facebook?
I think there still is. It all depends on what type of content you choose to publish there. And ultimately comes down to how you get people to want to engage with you further and getting somebody deeper into your brand. So I think what it does today is it makes the pressure point a little higher on thinking beyond just growing followers and thinking beyond just getting more people on your page, but it's making sure you're pulling them all the way through the journey with you and that you're thinking about what are those unmet needs, because now more than ever, being unique and distinct in your content and being relevant in somebody's life. Just think about it. Even mobile apps are another great example of you need to be relevant. And so in order to really pull that customer in, it takes a little bit more thinking, a little more planning, and a lot more content focus on understanding your core customer and what they want and they need from you. And if you can really nail it and you can really give that value add, the tips, the education, whatever it may be for a particular brand, I think you've got a really great shot at still continuing to use Facebook as a way of doing things, of acquiring new customers and finding new customers. But it needs to be a very thoughtful approach, or one could lose money in a heartbeat real quick. Right. So I still believe that there's advantage of trying to find people through the networks there and through social media more than ever.
We have one client, the Empire State Building, that still gets extraordinary organic reach, but it's an unusual one in the mix of things. And we see more that you've got to pay to play a little bit, even.
Yep.
Yeah. But if you boost the right post and the content, as you say, is really good, you can get extra miles as a result of engagement and social sharing. Let's talk about content and the creation of it. You mentioned a couple times quality over quantity. It's interesting. I'm still hearing some quantity folks talking about it. There's a company I know that is very big into helping publishers optimize. And for them, optimizing revenue means having more content, which I think is really interesting. And so they're arguing, but my argument for brands like the one we're talking about here, Pet360, has been quality over quantity, because at the end of it is that particular piece of content, every single one of them, either it is really good and represents the really goodness of the brand, or it flat out isn't worth doing. Where are you with quality versus quantity?
Well, during my time at Pet360, quality had to be the number one most important component. And the reason I say that is, with a small team and limited resources and the expense that goes into quality, you've really got to be thoughtful about how you're going to distribute it. And you can find an editorial team max to the gills really fast and not see the results you're looking for. And so, I mean, there were so many fits and starts and stops of different ways of doing content calendars and integrating pieces of it. And at the end of the day, having really strong threads across social, across email, across website experience, across mobile experience, really creating leverage on whatever one is creating became the secret sauce.
Yeah.
And integration, while people have been talking about integrated marketing for years, and it's not a new concept, the actuality of being able to execute to it when you've got Instagram, you've got Pinterest, you have all these different sorts of content that's needed, it can be overwhelming for a team, even a little one.
Sure.
And so I think the quality aspect of it becomes critical, but not just quality, but quality by channel, by device, because what works in one won't necessarily work in the other. And I think one of my favorite statements about strategy is really about what you're going to choose not to do.
Yep.
And so therefore, being strategic about content and creation and really focused and putting the filters on what do you want to stand for in your relationship with the world become even more important. And then a team can really rally around those filters or pillars, whatever words you want to choose, because think about pet parenting. I mean, content galore. So having the focus and making sure we knew what we were focused on and what we weren't. And we tested and tried lots of things that didn't give us the runway we wanted, but we learned from them. And so that focus, I think, becomes critical when you're talking about quality. And it almost, to me, that statement really applies to any brand, of really knowing who you are, who your customer is, and what type of content will really resonate, and being clear on what that is out of the gate. Either that or having hypothesis and testing and then finding your way into that answer. That's
funny. Strategy is what you don't do. I just finally got around to reading Michael Porter on strategy. And it really rocked my world quite a bit. I had almost a day of depression as I thought about maybe the term and definitions of strategy that I've been using for 3 decades weren't quite as precise as they could have been. But he just lays down the law. It really is. And he actually uses the term that you did, race to the bottom, where everybody's trying to be best. And it isn't ever about being best. It's about being unique. And hopefully aligning that unique with a need, ideally an unmet need, and focusing on everything that you can do to build uniqueness all the way through the value chain, which I think is, it seems so obvious when I talk about it, but it isn't in the case that 9 out of 10, 99 out of 100 companies, I would argue, do not really have a strategy. And that in Michael Porter's definition of what that is. So I wanted to ask you, while we're talking about content, did you do all the content in-house?
We had a combination of some of it in-house, editors in-house.
Right.
And then at that time, we had quite a few writers externally. And I think the other neat part of the growth of the company was the acquisition of BlogPause, which was and is an amazing network of bloggers in the pet space,
right,
who are all creating content. And so finding ways to leverage that content and bring contributors into your writing and into your content strategy and having them speak on your behalf. And, it was a really neat marriage and a really neat synergy of having external writers who have their own businesses and being able to partner with them and have them be underneath the umbrella, and watching them really help the brands that we also worked with create campaigns that then had legs that then Pet 360 could draft off of.
Right.
It was a very, very neat symbiotic way of creating content and sharing and syndicating back and forth. So it was really a blend of in-house and external, and I'm a big fan of that. Because I feel like the inside workings of an organization and of a brand is constantly living and breathing, and having a good, strong team who makes sure the focus and the filters are aligned with all the writing resources become really critical. And so back to the quality component of it, if you've got a strong core team inside, they can make sure that as you're scaling your content, that it's aligned with where the rest of the business is going and evolving, because it's changing every day.
Right. And it's tricky. It's funny. We talk a lot here about, campaigns, content campaigns and tentpole ideas. There's a lot of content calendars, to me, are death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's just lots of little pieces. And while we spend a couple more minutes on Pet 360, and before we get on to a vitamin shop, which I'm excited to talk to you about as well, I want to because you brought up bloggers, and I think a lot of people don't really understand how to work with bloggers, how you pay them, how you evaluate their appropriateness and their footprint and all that. Can you just, if you were talking to someone who had never done a blogger program, give them the ABCs of what it takes to do that right. What were the criteria for picking them, and just a little detail on that.
Number one is knowing what audience you're trying to reach.
Right.
Because
target thing, yay.
Each blogger has their own unique niche and what it is and what their message is. And some will be right for your brand and some won't. And so before ever engaging, I'm a big fan of making sure you do your research. And I know that sounds so basic. However, after sitting through many different blogger conferences and having one-on-one relationships with bloggers, it seems as though oftentimes that research isn't done. And so a mismatch may happen and expectations may not be set and clear, and then people get disappointed. And so I think really knowing, no different than if you were choosing a creative agency, to say, here are the things that we really want to accomplish. Are you a fit or not? I think that conversation needs to happen, and it can't go without, you just can't brush it underneath the rug. Along with being really clear about turnaround times, another very small thing, but yet can be a big thing, of bloggers each have their own schedules and calendars and things that they're doing. And so really knowing how much of a commitment you're going to want from them and what's realistic to expect from their audience. And each blogger will be unique and different in terms of what's okay with the guidelines for their audience. Because at the end of the day, they're no different than a journalist on some fronts, where they have an amazing following and their job is to create value every day. So you got to make sure that what they believe to be valuable is a match for what you're trying to create to have value in. And sometimes it's a match and sometimes it's not. And so finding the ones that really resonate with your brand can be revolutionary in terms of finding you new customers and new people for your community. So it's a very business.
Determine how much to pay them? I mean, because a lot of companies go and say, well, we pay $250 or $500 per blogger, period, but not all bloggers are equal, as you said, So how do you pay them?
Well, the experience I've had in the space would indicate getting started with somebody and agreeing to terms that are a standard rate is a great way to start. Okay. However, as that blogger brings you more and more value, I'm going on the positive side, assuming that they are, as they're building their audience and as they're growing, they should be able to grow with you if things are happening right here. And so it's not uncommon for me to have seen experiences where you begin with a blogger day one and you have a smaller test, a smaller pilot that you're doing because you're getting to know each other.
Sure.
And you're getting to see how impactful their audience is. No different than renting an email list, quite frankly. Once you get into the list, you see how valuable is it. Same thing, this is an audience. And then as time goes on and as you brainstorm together and as that blogger's adding value to your brand and to your conversation, they can grow along with you. And as you grow, they grow.
Right.
And so I'm an enormous fan of saying there should be different tiers based on the value that blogger is bringing you and based on the audience and how passionate and how quick they're growing their audience and how they're doing things. And that way it's really a partnership where you're growing something together.
So it's funny, we've talked a lot about building long-term relationships with customers and looking at lifetime value. And while we're talking about bloggers, I would imagine it would be very easy to evaluate a blogger based on the number of people they push to your site in a short period of time, which if you think about it is a direct response. It's not a brand lift. And so first question is, did you look at it that way? And if you didn't look at it on a direct response basis, how did you make the case for brand lift with a blogger? So again, we're building the brand, we're building awareness, we're building intent, we're building favorability, but we're not necessarily creating a transactional moment.
Well, so we'll use the lagging indicator here for a second and say it's as much about engagement and quality as it is about traffic. So let me explain more about what I'm saying and what I mean to say on that, which is you could have a blogger send you droves and droves of traffic, but the traffic could potentially not be a match for what you're offering.
Right.
And then you're just delivering lots of traffic that's not going to convert down the line or in the short term. So in my experience, what I've seen become incredibly important is understanding the engagement scores of what's happening when content's posted with that blogger. That engagement aspect is equally important to the amount of traffic they're sending you. And also looking at their metrics in terms of how they're building a business, because at the end of the day, a blog is a business.
Right.
And as they're growing traffic, what have their rates been? How are they committing to building their business? Because maybe they only have 20,000 people today, but they might be 20,000 of the most highly engaged.
Exactly.
And then you might have somebody who's got 5 million, but that 5 million is such a broad base and it's not engaged at all.
Right.
And so there's a trade-off and a fine line. And this is where the science can sometimes overtake the art of picking those partnerships and picking who are those players. It's sort of like picking celebrities to represent your brand. Everybody wants the A-lister, and they're always extremely expensive. Right. But the real value is finding an up-and-comer in there. In order to find that up-and-comer, it's not always obvious where they are and where they're lurking.
Right.
And so it takes a little bit more research and a little bit more of an art and a science to check into personalities. And I think of blogging to be very similar, that finding a blogger who's really a personality and finding who you want to invest in, your expectations of them may very well be different. So it's a true art and science. And I'm a big fan of not only using direct response, it all has to add up, but you could have 10 of the best ones, which are better than having 500 of bloggers who just drive you traffic and there's no engagement, because then you're still not getting anywhere with your brand. So to me, it's that real balance, and it's being thoughtful about who you choose and how you choose them.
Well, it's interesting. We happen to be working with a client right now with when we're developing a campaign with a junior celebrity, and we know that it is not going to be a direct response campaign. It's just not. But we know that it will create brand lift, and but there's a little bit of a trust me here factor in this that it will happen. So we're going to move into our second hour, and it's so funny that I'm going to show my book here, that you were mentioning art and science, because the subhead of my book, and it's no surprise that you're in it given this, Learn the Science and Art of Marketing from 64 Thought Leaders. And speaking of thought leaders, I am here with Rose Hamilton, who just recently started at the Vitamin Shop. And so let's talk about that. What's your new job, and how many days have you been on the job?
Well, I'm going into my 7th week in the new job, and I am the Chief Digital Officer, which means I am tasked with creating the strategy and the development of all digital touch points across the company.
Wow.
Not to be confused with only e-commerce or only an app. This is truly thinking about every customer touch point. And there are so many of them, whether you're in a store, whether you're online, whether it's mobile, all of the ways that we can enable relationships with health enthusiasts and our customers, who are all very passionate, and figuring out how to enable them with the wonderful world of digital today. So it is, I cannot express how excited that I am to be here with these amazingly passionate people. And it's a space in health and wellness that extends so much farther than vitamins and supplements. And it's a space that I'm personally very attached to, as I was to being a pet parent as well. So I'm honored and totally psyched to be here.
So so the health enthusiast is the equivalent of pet parents. That's what that's our target here.
Yeah.
And
yes.
And so, as a CDO, do you have a 100-day plan?
Well, I would say I have a little unique situation here, that the Vitamin Shop is going through a reinvention.
Oh.
And we will be announcing more to our stakeholders in early 2016 in first quarter. So I have entered into the organization at a pretty special moment where I certainly have a 120-day plan, but unlike most roles of this nature where you'd walk in, usually you're busy trying to create a change management situation and trying to explain to everybody all the things that need to change. Whereas in this instance, it's amazing to be a part of this new executive team and the team who's been here for some time and the mixture, and have everybody be really excited about where we're going. And digital is a big part of that. So I'm excited.
Well, you'll have to come back on when you have the announcement, so we can get the scoop right off. Let's talk about, you mentioned, and you certainly, I'm intrigued when you said that digital extends into the store. How does digital extend into the store?
So if I'm going to just be a customer for a moment.
Okay.
If I walk into stores, and by the way, I have been a customer of the Vitamin Shop for years, which makes this all the more special. When I go to the Vitamin Shop, I usually have something I'm trying to get an answer on.
Right.
And usually I can type into Google, I can Google it and get lots of answers, but I don't know if I really trust any of them. And quite frankly, it's very overwhelming. So for me, for the last 10 years, walking into a Vitamin Shop store, is where I would go to ask a health enthusiast to get some advice, because many of them are nutritionists, many of them are trained in this space, and they're really knowledgeable. And the ability to be able to empower, enable health enthusiasts with more and more education and more content to help them deliver on that experience that I'm describing, that's very personal to me as the customer, is an opportunity to extend digital beyond what you and I may know as the web.
Right. And
take the web, which really at the end of the day is lots of content, whether it's mobile, whether it's on an iPad, and really empower and enable health enthusiasts to do the best job they can, creating custom personalized programs for each unique individual they touch on a daily basis. And so digital is really about empowering and enabling and figuring out how to do that regardless of the channel.
So I was thinking, I was thinking that you might be going in a direction of, so I walk in the store, I'm carrying a mobile device, my phone is Wi-Fi activated, and if I'm in some kind of a membership program with you, a beacon alert might show up on my phone and saying, oh, by the way, you bought vitamin D 2 months ago, it may be time to stock up. Is it going to get to that point where Drew, who lives in New York City, and of course is like everybody else here, is going to be vitamin D deficient for the rest of the winter, needs to stock up a little bit. Will we get to the point where you'll be able to one-on-one sort of interact with me and say, even as whether I'm in the store or walking by?
The world is going there.
Right.
Most certainly customers are going to expect it.
Right.
And as a retailer, as a brand, we have to get there to serve those unmet needs.
Right.
How that looks and what that's going to look like over time, I'm excited to be here to help craft that journey. But I think what you're touching on there is a part of where the world is going. Right. And in order to be relevant in the life of a health enthusiast, relevant in health and wellness, being able to add value will be critical for us to both acquire customers, retain them, and have them not just be loyal to us, but have them be our advocates.
Sure.
So that type of experience will become important as we think about the next stages.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can have a long conversation about Internet of Things, but it feels like there's a very,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll probably imagine in a couple of years, the vitamin top will have a little factor where when I unscrew it, that will indicate, that I've now opened this and therefore it's going to, or that it will now retire in 6 months, and, lots of good information on that. You would think, for example, compliance is a big issue. I know in regular medication, I don't know if it's the same in the supplement area, but if you had the Internet of Things going on there and saying, hey, you missed your supplement today, I mean, it's going to get there, I would think.
Well, with all the data capture that's happening, and when you think about consumer behavior, it's there, and figuring out how to leverage it to find those big problems that a customer may have and being able to solve for them, and using data and using technology and using relationship building with them to solve for them, I think is an enormous opportunity. And when I look back earlier in my career to this thing called the web,
right.
The next generation of the Internet of Things really is taking that data and being able to leverage it in a way that's useful and creates value, and becomes part of somebody's life and helps their experience with you be very relevant. So it's and the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, I know.
And
we can
only just
begun. It's funny. When I reread your chapter today, and I noticed that you said, because we're not at, this was when you were at Pet 360, that because you're not encumbered by brick and mortar, you can actually be more nimble and compete more effectively. Well, now you have brick and mortar.
Yes, we do.
Yes, you do. So how is that changing your frame of reference now?
When I look back 5 years ago, let's use that as like my benchmark, the brick and mortar environment was in a very different place. And I think the consumer was in a different place. And much to the conversation we just had around the Internet of Things and consumers' expectations, brick and mortar had a different feel to it, and how fast brands felt the need to evolve with that customer. It was different 5 years ago.
Sure.
But now I view it as this is the time for the integration, the tight integration between physical experience and services and value, like I'm describing around content and consultation and being able to help somebody, which is what our 5,000 health enthusiasts do every day, day in and day out. That's a really important value proposition. And it's one that, well, yes, we have online chat, and you can certainly get your questions answered that way. And while, yes, we have educational content in a digital environment, the blend, depending on where you are in your journey, is really important, because one day I might really need to talk to somebody. But another day, I just might want to change the frequency of how often my product's arriving at my doorstep. So I, as an individual, might have a different profile and a different need state depending on what I want to do. And I truly believe that one-to-one experience is so important, and that's the art. That digital can bring you a little bit of the art and emotional connection. Certainly it can, and it can be really fun. But I think the well-rounded experience is leveraging what's unique in each of those different touch points, whether it's calling, whether it's in a store, whether it's digitally through mobile, whether it's an app, all of those things, and taking what's unique in each of them and creating value and making it seamless and at every stage of the journey. So to me now, I feel differently than I did 5 years ago, because I can really see the vision of how they can all come together. And I do believe in a retail environment, moving nimbly and bringing some of the lean thinking into a larger organization will become an increasingly important ingredient for the future. And so now it's fun to come back into an environment where I have all of these channels to play with and get to really be innovative and build an organization around that and see everybody have an impact on where it's all going.
Well, and I think that I can sense your enthusiasm to be up more levers to pull, more levers to coordinate, but getting those all right is complicated. And I'm curious, one could argue that vitamins in many ways and supplements are a commodity. Once I've found the brand that I like, I just go and buy the cheapest version, not unlike pet food. How do you avoid and how do you sort of get beyond commodity price-based decisions at Vitamin Shoppe.
Not unlike the pet space, where it's a highly complex, overwhelming category, vitamins and supplements are as well. And when I think about the space that we thrive in every day, it really is even above and beyond just a vitamin and a supplement. And it has a lot to do with a lifestyle. And as a lifestyle, content plays a role, solutions play a role. And I might be able to go on Amazon and order whatever it is that I want, and at a cheap price, that's fine. But what I'm not necessarily going to get anywhere else is that one-to-one engagement and the one-to-one help that I might need to create that right solution for me, because not everybody's the same.
Right.
And not everybody's body interacts with a different supplement or a different type of something they're adding into their diet as they're trying to get better at their health goals. And so that unique, personalized feel is what I believe consumers today are demanding and expecting from brands that they're willing to have in their lives on a daily basis. Because people are increasingly more busy.
Right.
And the more value that a brand offers at helping solve for things and taking really overwhelming space
right.
and making it a lot more logical and a lot more personal to me, the more I'm going to want to tell all my friends and family about it, because at the end of the day, that's how it works. Everybody looks to their friends and family as their trusted advisors. So if we're doing our job right, we're helping people at an individual level, and then they're going to want to stick with us. So I think that's the opportunity, far beyond price and far beyond promotion, but it is the relationship and the trust that we're building every day.
Which is a very interesting thing when you can control the digital. Now, we had one question that I wanted that's a little bit backtracking a bit, but I wanted to see if you had an opinion and had experience with it, which is on affiliate marketing and how
Sure.
that fits into this larger conversation that we've been having about driving quality traffic versus quantity of traffic to your online sales.
You know, I think about affiliates no differently than strategic partnerships. And knowing where your target customer is hanging out and knowing what they're doing in their life is important. And oftentimes an affiliate, no different than a blogger audience, exactly who you should be finding. And not every affiliate, if I really take it up a level and say an affiliate is no different than a strategic partner and a valued strategic partner, there are affiliates who are very deep into loyalty, as an example, very deep into the angling of it's not just about the deepest promotion, but it's about finding valuable partners for their audience,
right.
for whatever it is they're looking at. And so I really see that affiliate network as being critical because, again, it's another audience of people and it's a strategic partnership. And you can really find great affiliated relationships out there that it can extend into the physical environment, the digital environment. So I almost would take the notion of affiliates and open it up even broader and say you could even have corporate relationships with people, corporate sponsorships. There's all kinds of fun things to do in that space to really find your target customer and to get into their lives.
Well, you have a more optimistic look at affiliates than I do. We worked on a debit card brand a couple of years ago, and again, we were doing events and social for them, but our direct marketing partner was doing affiliate, and at first blush, it looked like affiliates were driving applications really cost effectively, and so drove a ton of enrollments. We got zero activations, literally zero activations. And it was very simple. They were taking their $10 and they were running. And that was it. And their motivation was not the motivation of a real customer who would take the debit card and load it in there. So it was a major, it was caused a real problem for us for a couple months until we had the sort of loading data to realize, oh my God, and had to completely abandon, in this particular case, affiliate. So it doesn't always work out, but I imagine, yeah, and you were really speaking to the need for quality, and again.
Yes, that's exactly it. And I think having the metrics in place, and that's where lifetime value is really important, and segmenting your affiliates, no different than segmenting your bloggers, because it might mean that the affiliate network in its broadest general answering isn't necessarily bringing you the quality customers. It might mean there's an argument to trim it back and make sure it is the quality partners who do bring the behavior and the experience that you're looking to have.
Sure.
And so So the biggest advice I can give is to really look at a segmentation strategy and look at that lifetime value component to the channel and really understanding it. You might make decisions differently depending on the data that you find.
Yeah, amen to that, because I really caution anybody, you go down the affiliate hole, it looks really good at the start, just make sure it's good at the end. So, well, thank you for that, diversion into affiliate. And we have about 10 minutes left, and I want to sort of now get back to a sort of 10,000 foot look at e-commerce and digital in general as the CDO. As CDO, what do you see as your sort of top 3 priorities?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, finding ways to enable the world with digital technology is so important.
Right.
You know, I mean, it really and truly is. And being able to focus on that and focus on leading the strategy and the development across all of the touch points is going to become an enabler and an accelerator for the business. And so when I think about anything I'd be putting into my agenda, obviously in the first 60 days, I have a very large learning agenda.
Right.
And it's important to me to really understand how things work and who the people are. And the team's been fabulous at helping to onboard me. But at the end of the day, the mission is to really take the potential and the opportunity and enable the rest of the world here to build tighter relationships with our customers and to solve their issues.
Right.
And so it's really that simple. And you and I know at the end of the day, business is about acquiring customers, retaining those customers, and helping to create them to be loyal. And so anywhere that digital can be an enabler and a support system to that will help to grow the business. And so really putting my thinking cap on holistically and enterprise-wide is my number 1 priority, balanced with this amazing team. And I get of smart people around the table to try to help them be successful as well, and to get in the boat and row right along with everybody else. And so that's kind of where my head's at.
So is there a CMO as well at Vitamin Shoppe?
We have a chief merchandising and marketing officer. Yes. So he oversees merchandising and marketing.
So CMMO.
Correct.
We'll have to tell Pete to think about it. How do you work with the CMMO as the CDO and make sure that you are aligned with his activities?
Well, I think the neat piece here is it kind of goes back to, again, I know I sound like a broken record, but it really is true. It goes back to the customer. Right. And so while he's gaining all of these wonderful insights about our customer and about our segments, being able to think about how to leverage that and to find solutions that align with what our customers are looking for and what our focus is becomes the magic in the middle, and everything from there all the way to assortments and thinking about, you know, what's the right experience in the digital environment and, you know, what is it that we should be offering. And so I feel like the blend of knowing the brand and where it's going combined with where we want to differentiate, combined with insights and intel is a great mixture to be able to meet in the middle and create some magic. You know what they always say is the real genius is when 2 people get together who are brilliant and bright, and the genius is in the middle. And I feel like that's really true, especially more than ever in this situation, because we've got to make sure that we're clear on that customer and how we're going to think about going to market and being unique and differentiated.
I'll be sure to call him and remind him that the genius is in the middle. Just
luckily, I have empathy for the role after coming myself, so that helps me in the long run.
Exactly, you can reverse mentor him on that. But it is so it's a very different role than a CMO role,
yes.
and that's exciting too. But certainly one that you've been training for 15 years, and certainly have touched all of that. So let's start to, as we wrap up and start to think about 2016, what do you think sort of the biggest challenges are going to be for you and for people trying to succeed in web experience creation?
So I think the complexity, well, number 1, the customer is driving. I mean, that is just it, is we got to have our ears open, because where 5 years ago brands were driving, now the customer's driving.
Right.
And there will be no point at which the customer is not evolving every single month, every single day. And the volume, the sheer volume of change that's happening is going to require all of us to be enormously nimble in how we build and grow things.
Right.
And the volume of data, of consumer behavior and interaction is growing, and figuring out how to harness that.
Right.
And then also being able to stay in touch with the customer and making sure one's saving time for that, because it's a full-time job to navigate within an organization. But being able to balance and make sure the customer's at that table and that you're with them and that some major trend doesn't happen that you've missed, that's meaningful, either in a good way where you could have caught a wave that could have really catapulted the business, or a different wave that goes the other direction. And so I think being in touch with the customer and building organizations to be nimble enough that you don't have a waterfall approach to everything, and you wake up a year after you set out a plan and you haven't changed and you've stayed focused, but then you find the whole world has changed.
Right.
So I think that nimble nature of being able to take advantage and being able to be opportunistic. And let's face it, in our space, being resilient is really critical. You got to test, you got to try, and having no fear of failure, but being smart about it and being balanced about it and being able to take some of those risks. I think all of that matches up to becoming an even more lean world we live in here, to stay lockstep with that customer along the way and make sure we're not missing a beat, which is no small feat, I might add.
No, I was going to say piece of cake. What are you going to do the other 40 hours a week? Because that sounds like you could do that in a couple of minutes. Seriously, one of the things that we've talked a lot about the consumer and the art. I would think it could be easy to become overwhelmed by the data. That between programmatic buying, between artificial intelligence that might be able to drive and encourage, you want fries with that on an intelligent level, right? I mean, all those sort of data-driven things to sort of, and I would argue that's incrementalism, but that you could spend a lot of time and you might not get it, or you might. And how do you balance your time right now and to make sure that the data doesn't take over your life?
Well, being focused is a challenge in a world that's constantly changing, but I also think it's part of the solution, which is being able to be focused and know what problem you're trying to solve. And I take that chapter a little bit out of product development, digital product development, not to be confused with merchandising. Right. But one of the most important things when you're thinking about building digital experiences is to really be clear on what problem you're trying to solve.
Right.
And so even as I look at my inbox that's filled with hundreds of vendors who'd love to work with us, I am really trying to stay focused on what problems are we trying to solve, what must be true in the next 12 months when we exit it, beginning with the end in mind, and making sure I understand that. And from there, we can line up and say, what do we want to place our bets on? What are the areas we want to push the envelope on in service of our greater good, of our mission here, which is making health and wellness easier and personalized for customers every day. That's what we do in our stores, and figuring out the data component of it, how it enables and makes that experience better, whether you're online or whether you're in our stores. And so it's really making sure one maintains a clear lens on what are we here to do here, and what problems are we trying to solve, and how do all the bells and whistles and data that we could be digging into, because we know there's tons of it, how do we not get overwhelmed and take it a piece at a time and build from that? And I think that's one thing this team here has done a great job of doing, is putting a great foundation in and finding ways to continue building on top of the successes that they've had along the way. So I really, truly believe the focus is the key part. And it's not to say the focus can't change, but the problem that you're trying to solve shouldn't be changing.
Right.
How you do it, you can evolve, and that's what allows you to be lean and nimble. But being focused on making sure you're always answering for what's that bigger, grander state helps to keep the North Star there, as you have to whittle through loads and loads of data and options and choices you have to make every day.
Well, you sound like you just read Michael Porter again, and I think that's a great place to sort of bring closure here today. I've been here with Rose Hamilton, the CDO of Vitamin Shoppe. We've been talking about creating an amazing web experience. We started with a lot on content and how content helps to connect and build brand experiences. We then evolved into sort of the role that technology will play to create this seamless experience. I think any student of marketing would find lots and lots of really good insights from our conversation today. So I'm so grateful that you made the time. I know this is a really busy holiday season and a lot of people out there buying vitamins and stocking stuffers. So I'll let you go, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me today, Rose, and I wish you the best of luck in your new role. And I hope to see you at a CMO dinner, maybe upcoming in Philadelphia sometime soon. Is that where you're based, by the way?
I am on. Say that again.
Are you in Philadelphia? Or?
No, I'm actually in Secaucus, New Jersey, very close to New York City.
Perfect. Then you'll come to our New York dinners. Great.
You bet I will.
Awesome.
Listen, Drew, it has been such a pleasure, and I am an enormous fan of your book and the work and the thoughtfulness you put into it. And there are few people who are as thoughtful as you when asking for time on a show. And so I want to really give credit to you that your content is always great, but it's great because you're thoughtful about what you put into it. So thank you for being a great mentor and somebody who I watch all the time, and you inspire me. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. And thanks to the listeners and the people who will be watching this later on. So I'm going to stop recording now. Bye.